Welcome to everyone. I'm Susan Miller, a member of Windsor Climate Action, a local nonprofit, and we are very excited to be able to host this speaker series regarding climate change and what we can do in Windsor to address various aspects of it. Many thanks to the town of Windsor for providing a grant toward this effort, especially thanks to Patrick McMahon and Flavia Ray de Castro. This is our third and final speaker of our series. The first focused on air quality, the second talked about land use, and now we're going to focus on water. We are very pleased to welcome tonight Amy Petrus. Amy currently serves as the Executive Director of the Farmington River Watershed Association, the FRWA. This is a nonprofit focused on preserving, protecting, and restoring the Farmington River through research, education, and advocacy. She has worked at FRWA for over 20 years, managing projects related to watershed planning, water quality protection, habitat restoration, and green infrastructure. She also currently serves on Connecticut's Council on Environmental Equality and is a member of the Connecticut State Water Planning Council Advisory Group. A lot of words. And she's also a member of the Sustainable West Hartford Commission's Nature-Based Solutions Working Group. Before she joined FRWA, Amy was an agricultural Peace Corps volunteer in Morocco. Pretty cool. And she's also worked as a hydrogeologist for a consulting firm specializing in groundwater. She holds a bachelor's degree in science and geology from Stony Brook University. Please join me in welcoming Amy Petrus.
Hi. All right, thank you for that. I'm happy to be here today to talk about, this is one of my favorite presentations to do. We decided to call it Clean Water Starts With You, but I also like to call it river-friendly landscaping. And we're going to talk a little bit about, river-friendly landscaping in the town, but then also at your homes and gardens. So, like we said, we're from the Farmington River Watershed Association. We like to share that the watershed is very large. It's 33 towns, and it put a little star where we are tonight. So we are at the mouth, practically, of the river before it goes into the Connecticut River. And so another reason that we like to do advocacy in towns that are in this greater area is there's a lot of drinking water that is provided by the Farmington River. And if you are an MDC customer, you're also drinking Farmington River water. So it's another layer for why you should be thinking about and protecting the Farmington River wherever you live. And so we do like to start with water and watersheds. And so here is an example of a landform, and the white boundary is a watershed. And so what does that mean? Well, it means that it's an area where all the water that's inside it drains to one point. And so you can see here, it points to a single outlet. So wherever you choose that outlet to be, that's the size of the watershed. And so the Farmington River watershed encompasses 33 towns. But if you look at the Connecticut River watershed, you're looking at 4 states. So they come in a variety of sizes. So you can see here, we've changed the graphic a little bit to show the yellow areas as the bigger watersheds, and the white lines are the smaller watersheds contained within that. And so you can get even, smaller and smaller per tributary. So for example, in Windsor, there's the Millbrook. So the Millbrook is a smaller watershed of the Farmington River in Windsor. And then it wouldn't be a water presentation without a little diagram about the water cycle. And so, yeah, what do we have here? We have rain, causes precipitation. We have surface runoff. That, leads into, rivers, streams, lakes, what have you. Some of it infiltrates into the soil. And what we're going to talk about tonight is the situation with stormwater. And so stormwater is water that is contaminated from hardened surfaces that get put into our rivers and streams. And it's the #1 water quality problem in the country. And as we develop and as we cover our forested areas with parking lots and we drive over them and we have cars, that doesn't allow that water to infiltrate and filter, and instead gets pushed into our rivers and streams. So it's an animated slide that I've borrowed from UConn, so kind of shows it after the fact. And so I wanted to share a little bit. This is a really great graphic that we've stolen from UConn Clear and we use all the time. And so it's about development in the water cycle. And so this is the flow rate of a river over time and what happens when it rains, right? So here we have a forested landscape. This kind of looks like the upper river near Barkhamsted. This is a forested landscape. What happens when it rains? So what happens is, and I don't have a pointer, but this is what a river will look like in a forested landscape when it rains. So it will have a gradual, climb up, and then it will gradually come down. And that's because the water is infiltrating and slowly getting to the rivers. Oh, are you going to give me a pointer?
I'm going to give you a pointer.
Okay.
Push the orange button.
Okay. And then, so what happens if we do a very similar thing on a parking lot? What happens when it rains over a large, big box store? Well, we see when it starts to rain, more runoff arriving faster, okay? So and that's because this water, instead of going into the ground, has to go somewhere. So it finds its way to a drain, usually. That's what we construct in this area, and it ends up going into the river quicker. And so there's a bunch of problems that happen with development and the water cycle. So there's a water quantity impact. So like I said, you have more water. It hasn't got a chance to infiltrate, and so it will cause flooding. And so here's an example of a water quantity, so amount. And I have my little slides here, if you didn't notice. There's, if you have more water, there might be things underneath the surface that you don't know about. So flooding and erosion. So you have more water, the water, you're not used to it coming there, so it's just gonna kind of maybe scour the river banks. So sometimes you'll see after a flood or a giant rain event, you'll have this erosion. We also have water quality impacts. So we're gonna have more nutrients in the river. We can see here this parking lot, you can see like an oily sheen. You're gonna have sediment. If it's a river bank that isn't used to getting that much water, you're gonna have this sediment coming in, pathogens from the forest landscape, from animal waste, other organic materials. Sometimes you're gonna be washing toxic contaminants, de-icing contaminants. Like, we're right near the airport. What do we have coming into Rainbow Brook? A lot of de-icing constituents. Debris, there's a lot of freshwater impacts and thermal stress, because also we have a parking lot, or we have a hardened surface, it's collecting heat. And so you're gonna warm that water as opposed to it landing on a leaf that kind of trickles into a forest. You're gonna have those kind of situations. So this is right by our office. And of course, because we're nerdy, we ran outside to take a picture when it was raining. And so you can see here, this is a pretty serious storm in Simsbury, right on Hot Meadow Street. And we just had to get a picture of all the water in this park, in this intersection going right into the storm drain. And that storm drain goes into our rivers and tributaries, which goes into the Connecticut River eventually. So Simsbury's portion of stormwater goes down, eventually flows by Windsor, ends up in the Connecticut River, and then we end up in Long Island Sound. And so I like to show this picture because it kind of gives a sense. There was Hurricane Irene in 2011, and it caused a lot of damage up in Vermont. And roads washed out. We had just like plowed the fields up there. We were going to be planting, and you had a lot of sediment that got washed out into our rivers. And so you can see here, this is the Thames River right next door. It didn't have the impacts of Irene, so you have a good comparison here of like, this is its water coming in, but then this is all the sediment that's washing in from from 4 states of stormwater. So what's in here? Well, these images from the Long Island Sound study we absolutely love. And so this is a guy on Long Island Sound fertilizing his lawn. Because he fertilized his lawn, it rained. Where did it go? Here it is. It's in the Long Island Sound now. Here's another example of things that end up in the river is, animal waste. So people that don't pick up after their pets, they say it's natural. It's just part of, us all doing our part. We don't want to have those pathogens that are not supposed to be there normally in whatever way. You want to pick up your animal waste. I share this a lot with kids, and I tell them, like, so do you pick up after your animals? I make sure they say yes. And then I say, if you know somebody who doesn't, and they always say they know somebody who doesn't, could be the same person. And I say, well, do you swim in the local stream? Do you swim in Salmon Brook? And they're like, oh, right, okay. So, and here's another one. So when you wash your car and you put it on your driveway and you're washing your car and you're letting all those soaps go down the driveway into a storm drain, where is it going? It's eventually making it into Long Island Sound. And so we just want to share that those are some of the ways, and so those are some of the simple ways that you can think about how to reduce your impacts on nutrients and water quality is to, wash your car in a commercial lot because they actually recycle the water, or wash your car, pull it onto your grass because sand and soil is a great way to, filter some of that stuff. Some of those soaps can break down in soil or, bind to soil. Some soaps can even be almost a nutrient, so it's not a bad thing. I mean, you don't want to do it all every week. Probably not this summer with the drought. You don't want to be soaping your lawn every week. But, the best thing to do, and we like to share this for people that don't own lawns and have that, is just to take it to a commercial wash facility. So how can we make our homes more water? And I put in here river friendly because that's why we're here. And I do a whole nother workshop, and you're welcome to host me for that, on natural lawn care. This is another one of my favorites. I will not give it to any of my staff. There's 6 of us in the office total. I really like to talk about natural lawn care as well. So I'm going to go quickly because this is a very big wordy slide, and I just want to make sure if you want to know anything about this, we have a publications page on our website, FRWA. All of our lawn care handouts are there. So 1, get your soil tested. You know what? I wasn't a homeowner until 2015. I got my soil tested. Do you know what I needed to put on my lawn? It wasn't fertilizer. It was lime. And that's because we have a high pH here. You need to have or it's a low pH here. You have to have a higher pH in the 7s to grow turf. So if you don't have a higher pH in your lawn, you're not going to grow turf. You're going to grow the weeds that like to grow in the soil that is a lower pH. It's as simple as that. Be reasonable. if you're not reasonable, it's really expensive to try to get a green lawn to grow under a pine tree, for example, or some of those places. Think of something else to do there. Do you really want to linger under a pine tree anyway? Don't mow too low or too often. So this is another example. I have a neighbor. I like to dig on my neighbors all the time. So this is I have a neighbor. The guy comes every week. He doesn't need to come every week. It makes me crazy. But you want to use a sharpened blade. I recommend you buy an extra one. You take it off. You put the new one on, and then you have the old one to take to get sharpened. Cut no lower than 1/3 of the whole length of your grass. So if you have 3-inch grass blade, only cut to 2 inches. Usually we want to go a little higher. I say lift your mower up to the highest you can, because longer grass blades means longer roots, which means more drought tolerant, which means you don't have to water your lawn. It means you don't have to do so many things. And using less water saves the Farmington River, because it's a drinking water source for all of us. And leave your grass clippings. That's where you're going to get your nutrients, because they'll break down, especially if you're not using chemical fertilizers and pesticides that contaminate your soil. Irrigate no more than 1 inch per week. I don't do it at all. I don't see that I need to. If I water it, just means it's going to grow again. Aerate your lawn in compacted areas. That means there's like a machine you can get. You can get it from Home Depot. It takes little core samples out, and it gets water back in there. If you got wet areas on your lawn, you core aerate, you're gonna get a better, healthier lawn. And then seed or reseed once per year. That's it. If you want to hear more, I have a handout about grubs online. That's a big one. So the other part that I like to talk about is green infrastructure. So green infrastructure is this concept, aka we say LID or LID, low impact development. And so what is green infrastructure? That is a concept of, modifying the built landscape to accommodate, infiltration of water where it lands. And so it reduces the use of pipes, ponds, curbs, and gutters. So letting the water fall instead of ponding it or putting it into a pipe that shoots out to this one location. So trying to, fragment or disconnect all those pipes. Maintain recharge areas, buffer zones, and drainage courses. Like, for example, I was out in the back parking lot waiting for the doors to open this evening, and I was just looking around, and there's a parking lot, and there's these curbs with trees in them, and then right next to it is a storm drain in the parking lot that is just letting the water dry. Like, how does that tree even get any water? I don't know. But like, there's a series of those, and so if instead you had an infiltration swale in those areas, you would be absorbing that water. You'd still have the infrastructure there, and I'm going to show you a little bit about that. And so, yeah, reducing impervious surfaces and disconnect those that must be used. So, those big box stores always have like lots of parking, and it's not ever really full. So we used to build these parking lots to assume that the maximum number of people are going to be there. And I guess the only place that really is like that is probably Costco. But other places, it doesn't seem like it's that busy. And then conserve open space. And why? Well, we saw if you have a forested landscape, it's behaving perfectly fine. Do you have a question?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to show pictures. I promise these are really boring slides. Okay, so why use LID? So it costs less. It costs way less to create an area where water can recharge than to put in some big chamber under the ground that's going to absorb hold all that water until it's ready to absorb, or to filter it, or to do all those things. It's multifunctional, so it can be landscaping. It can also serve as a stormwater management purpose. And I'll show you some examples that we've done at the watershed. It has environmental benefits, especially if you plant it with native plants. Urban forestry, you're adding trees to the environment. It recharges groundwater. It mimics the local hydrology. And I would add, and I might add it later, is it attracts local pollinators, right? If you're putting native plants in there, you've got birds, you've got bees, you've got butterflies, spiders, who knows? It reduces community infrastructure costs, because what happens is if you're building all this stuff under the ground and then it breaks, it's really expensive to fix that. And it applies to renovations or new development. So we can think about this for new development, but we could also do retrofits. So what does that look like? So pervious parking. So we could take that parking lot that may be outside of here and put in pervious pavers, which is very expensive, but it does allow water to infiltrate. We can put swales in parking lots. So for example, instead of having curbs that go up and they block the water from going anywhere, you could have them that go down. They infiltrate some of the water that's coming through, and the rest there is still infrastructure around. And I will show an example of that. Rain gardens. So rain gardens are great for homeowners. So rain garden, you have a gutter, maybe, or you don't. But if you have an area where it gets wet, you can direct the water in your yard. You dig out a little bit, put some native plants in there, and you've got a pretty garden that attracts some butterflies and has flowers. In front of my house, I have a sidewalk, and then I have what I call a hell strip. It's just a grassy area. I've taken it out, and a little at a time, and I just keep putting in native plants. And I don't have, it's salt tolerant plants because of the salt that comes in the winter, and I get to see a lot of bees and fun things like that. And then this one's really fun to see too. So this is Ford Motor, their headquarters. They have green roofs. So this is kind of a cool way to modify a building that already exists. So what is a green roof? So what are the particulars of green roofs? So it can reduce your CO2 impact, reduce summer air conditioning costs, reduce winter heat demand. It's just like a big blanket that protects you, blanket or an umbrella. It can lengthen your roof life for 2 to 3 times. It's the next slide. And then it can negate the acid rain effect because you have a filtration system here that can kind of take out some of that pollution that's in the environment. And it can reduce peak rates of stormwater. So there's another way that it can reduce the peaking because it's absorbing right at that location, and then if there's additional, it'll go off.
Good question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what the average cost? I'm assuming it's much more than a normal roof originally, but is it like exponentially more in the beginning?
I would imagine.
I would say that I put a couple of them in, the plants, because the plants all come in little boxes.
Okay.
They get grown for your job, they do all the
Okay.
plants. So like Fairfield University, you have to have someone who's kind of committed and has the money. You put one in at the Hamden Police Station. You have to put in a watering system. So we actually collected the stormwater and then pumped it back up to the roof to water the rain garden.
Cool.
So you can go pretty far with it.
Yeah. Okay.
But once they're in, you're not supposed to have to touch them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, so.
Question too about the roof. One of the bullet items is that the roofs last 2 to 3 times longer, which kind of surprised me because I think there'd be a higher load on the roof and maybe because the water kind of sitting there, although it's.
You have to put protective boards under this stuff.
Yeah, but I'm just surprised it lasts 2 to 3 times longer. And that's good, but I'm just curious about how
I don't know necessarily why. It's just part. It's maybe it because of the blanket. Or do you have an answer for that?
We had to put a protective, like almost like a roof is. We put the normal roof, I think, was a white membrane, and then we actually had to put this protective board, like 2-inch foam, and then all these plants in these trays down.
So say your roof is getting like.
They had cactus. They had amazing plants.
Oh, wow.
Right. I mean,
That's awesome.
your roof, if it's insulated, it's not getting the hot hots and the cold colds, right?
Yeah.
It's a little,
Okay.
it's like a blanket again.
Have there been a lot of applications for single-family homes?
I would say this is more of a kind of regional, more development centric.
Okay.
But, you know, my brother lives in Portland, Oregon, and you should see the kind of green roofs. There's like green roofs on the dog houses and stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So here's Chicago. So Chicago, I think in like 2006, or they made, if anybody was renovating a building or building a new build in the city of Chicago, you had to put on a green roof.
Oh, that's awesome.
So this is Chicago City Hall's green roof. And so they have, so things change, so that's not a priority so much anymore. But there are a lot of green roofs in Chicago. Let's just say that. So this is
Wait,
just.
so they live through the winter is what you're telling us? That's impressive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
So, I mean,
Good point.
if Chicago can do it.
Yeah.
So this is just like an overview, a little bit more information. Permeable pavers are great if you're redoing your driveway, or you're doing a walkway. You know, it's just, it allows some infiltration. It helps reduce volume and peak rates of stormwater, which is what we're looking for. And reduces downstream impacts, such as the need for retention detention basin. So if you're doing a big development and you start putting these permeable walkers or walkways and maybe portions of the driveway, you're not causing those downstream impacts as much. And it looks nice, right? It's aesthetically pleasing.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
What about ice in the winter?
So it's really interesting. I think I'm going to be talking, well, I guess I can talk here. So when you have ice in the winter, you have it on an impervious surface. If you have a pervious surface it melts, it actually infiltrates into the ground. And so you have less of a problem. You don't have to ice. You don't have to salt, you don't have to do all the de-icing and salting that would normally happen because the water has somewhere to go. I'm not sure if I do have a picture. Oh, here it is, okay. Here's another example. Okay, so these are other than pervious pavers, there's pervious concrete. So have you gone to the state capitol building? This is a pervious concrete on the walkway to the state capitol building. I walk this every time I go to the Bushnell. I can see this pervious concrete. So here's an example of it. They have a base rock, and here is pervious pavement. So this is at University of New Hampshire. They have a whole stormwater program up there, that research program. So here's the impervious pavement, and here's the pervious pavement. It's a rainstorm. You can see the water flowing off of that and then not getting very far. So it will infiltrate. Any questions about that? I'm going to move on to curb.
Did that require building code changes, if you know? Like, could you use it anywhere?
I don't know the building code changes. I'm just giving examples, but
Once it's in one place, you can generally get it approved other places.
Yeah, I mean, this is all the research is being done, and this was part of greening the Capitol. There was a bunch of different projects they did, and this is just the moment for me to point it out as an option.
Amy, do you know if it's a lot more expensive now?
I mean, the problem is always that you need like a load of this stuff, and you have to put it down at the right time, and it can be more expensive. But there's like a lot of reduction in like maintenance costs in the long run. So this is another one I love to talk about, is curb cuts. So, this is just a regular street somewhere. It's probably Oregon because they do this really well. But I have seen a lot of these in New Haven. So you have a street, and then what they do is they just cut the curb. They dig out the turf or whatever's here, They plant a little bunch of native plants that can absorb water. And then if it gets too flooded, there's an exit. So here's another one. This one's a little more fancy. It's got a little grate. The water comes in, and depending on the level of storm, but usually because these are like retrofits, there's usually the infrastructure to deal with it if it tends to flood in that area. So if you're having a really crazy storm, there's still the infrastructure downstream that can take that water. But in the meantime, you're peeling some off and you're making these little cute gardens. And then I have rain gardens, which are, this one I actually tried to drive by it. This is in Windsor. This is at the Keeney Park Sustainability Project on Windsor Ave. So this is a project we actually installed with Keeney Park Sustainability Project. I have some pictures of it. This was a long time ago, but what happened is we came upon a partnership and they said they were having flooding in their basement. And we put gutters around the building. It's the park building. It's a Victorian home. Put the gutters in, directed them to this location. We put in 3 different gardens. And here's an example. You can see the side of the building. And here's the rain garden. So we also built out and took out a lot of the turf that they had there and planted it, as you can see. It looks a lot different now. We planted an edible rain garden there, and I think some of the plants took over, but Herb doesn't mind. He takes good care of it.
And that solved the basement flooding problem?
And yeah, just taking the water away and letting it infiltrate.
Wow.
And so here's a swale. So here's a parking lot. Looks like a school almost, with all those vans. And there's curb cuts here. Or there might even be a storm drain with a pond that comes in here, some kind of pipe. But you can see this little green thing here, and there's another kind of contraption here. So if the water gets to this level, it goes down the drain. But otherwise, it gets absorbed through this whole garden. And so we have here, like you can see, so we have our surface, we have the water flowing in. This is the overflow to an approved destination. And, wheel stops so that we don't have cars driving into it. And so low planters, if it's a car overhang, and they have check dams, which are just like if it's on a slope to slow the water down as it progresses. Here's another one. This one we did in Winchester. So this is at the sewage treatment plant in Winchester. So we dug out, this was like a little roundabout. So we dug it out, to create a swale and plant it. And so the runoff goes into the storm drain, but the storm drain's still there, it's just elevated. Oops. So there's where all the water goes. So if you have a place where you see like a broad area, there's just a storm drain and smack dab in the middle of it, you could make a rain garden around that storm drain. And basically you're just gonna elevate it, and the town can do that, the engineering department. I'm looking at Peter in the back.
I'm looking up how much pervious pavement.
And so, in our experience, when we do these projects, we have help from the town to do these projects. So here, this is one we did at Northwest Connecticut Community College. This is a swale behind their parking lot. And so we have just a series of basins that filter the runoff. And then this is one of our more recent ones. So I'm just showing this is our construction plan. This is Edgewood School. And this is the drain to this grassy swale that just got mowed all year. And then this is the parking lot where we modified the parking lot and put a catch basin in here to let the water go in here. So we disconnected all of this, actually the whole roof, and this parking area into this swale. And then on this side, you can see these little yellow bits. we put tree wells in, so tree infiltration wells. And so this is what it looked like, oops, oh, this is what it looked like before with the public works truck helping us out. And then this is it, the first year planted. If you want to go see it now, it looks way better. This is like second year stuff. But this is right after we planted it. So we did the whole swale. It's almost 200 feet long. And it's based on the engineering study, it's infiltrating 6 acres in this one school. And look how pretty it is. It had butterflies in it, it had birds. We had some resident geese for a while, but hard to get rid of those. And then tree wells. So tree wells are just like, sometimes they're constructed. And when we applied for this grant to do this project that we just completed this August, sometimes you have to put the whole thing in. But we worked with the city of Bristol, and we had a subcontractor, and we used granite curbing and engineered soil, and we did a bunch of these tree wells. And so here's what it looks like. Now, given this is a retrofit, so we had to deal with what we had, but here's the storm drain. And if the water's coming at it, we're hoping, and this is where, this is not going to get all of the water from the parking lot, but it's going to get a good amount. So it's going to get the stuff coming this way, it's going to get the stuff coming this way, but there's 4 of these in that parking lot. And so we are reducing the amount of water going into that storm drain. And then if there is a flooding situation, the storm drain is still there to take on whatever it was designed for in the first place. And so, I'm telling you all these things, but like, how does it work together? And this is another stolen slide. There was a project that UConn did called the Jordan Cove Project. And so what they had, it's a research project, and so they had a traditional suburban development, and then they had an LID cluster at the end. And so and what was in that LID cluster? I'm going to skip this slide and just go to this one. So in the LID cluster, there's a bioretention area in the center, in the turnaround area, pervious road and driveways, grass drainage swales, rain gardens. And does it work? So here's a rainstorm, traditional, pretty similar to what I showed you earlier on. And then what happened in the LID cluster? Wow. So we just have to, so just showing the one before, because these kind of are a pair, they kind of match it up in the end. And so, it's just one of those things that you just have to be intentional about these things in different ways. And you can handle the water coming off of your own yard. You can be more active and try to do it at a school or a town property or something like that. So those are some of the options. I like to talk about downspout disconnection, and this is something we could work with the Climate Action if you wanted to, is we currently have a grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to hand out downspout disconnect kits. And the idea is just to maybe don't do this. Just do something like this. And if we can give you a tube or something to make you bring the water to a different spot in your yard, away, not towards your neighbor's house, right? We don't want to make them angry, but towards an area in your lawn where it can absorb a little bit, it's better than it going straight into the driveway. So it's just an option of things that we try to share. Some housing has it going straight into a pipe that nobody knows where those go. I mean, they say they know where they go, but we were at a town fair a couple weekends ago, and I think every other person we talked to, they're like, oh, well, we have a pipe. And I was like, but that's the point. We don't. And he's, oh, it just goes to the wetland. So, and so basically the idea is just to cap that pipe, or to just, if you just have it going out like this, just to move it a little further from your foundation because you don't want to cause any problems. And then plant some trees or shrubs over here, or take up the yard a little bit. There is a good guide at Yukon Clear. They have a whole, it's Yukon Nemo's website, sorry. They have all of this information, how to do it, how to size it. They have a little widget in there to measure your roof area, where your runoff is coming, how to maintain it, how the costs are. This is even a QR code that I hope still works. And if you have an interest in doing something like this in the local area, FRWA also, if it's a public location, we do have some funding to share for materials for a rain garden, native plants, soil amendments if needed, all those kind of things. We do want to support reduction in stormwater, and we have a settlement fund for that. So that's it.
Oh, very nice.
And, yeah. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer now. You're welcome to email me anytime. You can call me. I will even get the phone call on my cell phone if you call my office. That's what happens now. So, and then another resource that we recommend and that a lot of our outreach is based on is riversmartct.org, which is a website that 5 community groups in Connecticut, we worked together to develop River Smart CT. For Connecticut, it's the Housatonic Valley Association, Pomperaug River, Rivers Alliance of Connecticut, FRWA, and there's one more that I can't think of right now. But all of us work together to make River Smart CT, and we host it cooperatively, and we use it to develop resources. So if you have any questions about anything that I talked about and you can't find it on our website or River Smart, you don't have to try to dig for it. You can send me an email.
Great.
Yeah?
Does MDC offer any financial incentives for reducing wastewater?
So I do think there are some options. So they were giving out rain barrels for a while. It's
I'm thinking for a municipality with stormwater.
So like to do a project, a stormwater reduction project?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to put MDC on the
Peter's
spot.
making
I would
faces.
say,
They've done pilot programs, and matter of fact, they did a small pilot program years ago in Deerfield to disconnect the foundation drains and the roof leaders that were going into the storm and into the sanitary sewer. So we did a few very small pilot programs, and it said they've offered rain barrels in years past, but to the municipality they have not on a larger scale.
yeah, I mean,
Not yet.
well, I think that their big trouble there is that they have combined sewers. So they have to separate those combined sewers. And so that's really taking up a lot of their time and money. But they also have developed a long-term control plan, which is on their website, the LTCP for short, long-term control plan. And there are projects in there, mostly in the north end of Hartford, for reducing storm flooding in some of the areas where they're having a lot of problems. I have specifically asked Scott Jellison, would he give funding to do those projects? Because some of those projects I would love to do, but then I have to kind of stay on my own turf. So he's said yes, he would help. I tried to encourage Keeney Park to do that, and they were hiring someone to be an executive director. It was too early. But it's there are projects that I think they would fund as long as they're in a plan. But overall, probably not in Windsor, I would say.
How do you measure, I know when you're doing, if something is going into the sewer system, you can certainly measure the flow through there. But how do you, when you're putting in these different projects, how do you measure
that it's doing what it's intended to do? Like, how do you do that?
So, so like this website, you know, what you have to do is you have a siting and sizing area. You have to figure out like what's your area and where, so you have your, let's call it your watershed of your rain garden. So you have the pipe outline, and then you just have to go backwards and say, okay, all of this area is coming in here, and what's average rainfall? So you have to look at average rainfall. They probably will put that in the siting and the sizing. There's like a tool you can use. You can figure out average rainfall for one rainstorm, and then you just calculate how much water it should take. And then that's kind of how you figure it out. And then for the most part, the smaller gardens will work. Once they're built, they're pretty solid. It's not, unless it's steep and the sides start slumping, but generally they're just kind of wide bottomed, like receptacles for water.
How do they, like our water patterns are changing, you know, we are having more major downpours, which with much more volume of water than we used to have. So like, is that kind of factored in when they're thinking about like an average rainstorm? I don't know what average
Yeah,
is.
I mean,
They're like 50-year floods, 100-year floods.
yeah.
And all those things are being adjusted.
It is a challenge, like even the state stormwater control manual that just got approved for 2025, we think those numbers are outdated. And so those are the guidance documents for all of the development that's happening in the state. And, you know, we're saying you need to design for bigger floods, just because of those singular events. So it's hard to say, but for me, what I like to do is add a rain barrel to the party, right? So put the rain barrel at the gutter, get the first flush of water, hold it in the barrel, let the overflow fall into the rain garden, and then you have the water, and you can hang on to that and then see what happens. But mostly you're planting plants that are drought resistant, that are mostly adapted to this area, and you know, if it's not going to make it, then it's not the right plant. So yeah.
About 12 years ago, I heard a lecture about the pervious driveways, and we were told the town of Torrington was doing that, like for their general town areas. Do you know how that went? How it's working?
I don't, unfortunately, speak with Torrington all that much.
Yeah.
Peter and I are buddies, but
I was going to say, I've worked mostly on much larger commercial projects, like a housing subdivision, and we put in these giant underground storm collection tanks if they don't have enough land. Do you know what kind of luck we might have trying to talk a town into using a rain garden versus these giant underground storage? Have you had that battle before and succeeded? Because the engineers just want to store the water and then have it drain in the storm system. And how could you persuade them, let's take a third of that out and we'll assume that the rain garden can handle it?
I think the problem is that what developers want to do is maximize their profits, and they want to build it out as much as possible, and this is the easiest way, and that's the constraints that they have, and that's they're following the law. But if you start building rain gardens, they take up space, and that makes it harder for them.
Fewer buildings.
Yeah. Fewer space for them to do the money-making part of the deal. So it's I can't go to every town meeting, and I can't always present all those things. We need an army of people to do that, because we usually find out about developments like that at the last minute, and we're expected to write a letter and show up at the town meeting, and that's 33 towns in the watershed, 23 in Connecticut, and there's 6 of us. It's nearly impossible for us to read development plans and get all the information that we need to have that conversation. I would say that the new stormwater manual is at least a better step forward, and it's helping a little bit. But I think, and it's hard to say in this environment. It's just like, sometimes I just wish we would do the right thing, you know? Like, but that's, you know, it just feels like a lot of work to go to someone and say, you know, please, we need you to do it this way, you know? But I would say, you know, bringing it up is always a good thing, because the commissioners can add that as a condition and say, you know, listen, this is too much. We want you to do this. And, you know, work on it with your commissioners. I think you're talking about the vessel project, right? The one in in Granby? Is it that the one with the big?
East Granby, they just did something and it was all full of tanks right on the edge of a wetland there. That was
They did it or they proposed it?
I think it's under construction already. Yeah. But I just saw these, I mean, in Hartford, you have to do tanks because there just isn't enough space. You know,
Right, and the
big paved areas, but out here in East Granby, yeah, we have a lot of space and like you could do something different. So
it's true, and
it's annoying.
yeah, I agree.
I had a question on the, in the very beginning, you talked about when the water is falling on a paved, like a parking lot, it's heating up, or it's a different temperature than it would be otherwise, and that can have impacts. Can you talk a little bit about what warmer water would do, or how that would impact things?
Well, I guess the example I will give is that the Farmington River is a prized trout fishery, right? And in the upper river, we have trout fishing that is world renowned, right? And that they survive on cold temperatures. If we start cutting the trees down and paving all the roads and the parking lots and making these exposed areas, we're creating area where the sun is getting straight onto the ground and the water falls on the ground and it warms it up, and it makes it stresses out animals, it stresses out plants, it stresses out insects. It changes the whole environment. So a lot of times we like to talk about protecting the river, protecting the buffer around the river, so protecting the river banks and an area around it so that we're letting that water absorb before it goes straight into the river. But you know, the built landscape sometimes doesn't allow that. And I mean, you see when it rains, you just see the steam coming off of the parking lot sometimes. And so, you know, it's just another way would be to plant more trees. And, you know, I worked in a farm before I went to the Peace Corps. I was working on a farm, and the farmer had a bumper sticker that said, "Trees are the answer." And like, I can't think of any reason why trees are not the answer for almost all the problems. You know, just plant a tree. And so like, that's where I kind of start, you know, if you have a giant parking lot, I mean, who wants to walk through a giant parking lot that doesn't have trees? Like, plant some trees. You know, I know, but that makes it, you know, the roots kind of can, you know, cause buckling sometimes. And you have to, but that, all of that hotter water, you know, as it gets built up and it becomes more and more, you know, it just abundant, the hotter water than the cooler water, it just creates a different climate and for the animals that live in the river. So that's the challenge. Yes?
We have a very large parking lot in town that, in my opinion, does not get enough use, or the use that it was built to provide. What would you recommend? I mean, I have an idea, but what would you recommend? Because I understand that all the crap from the street is going into the water, which ultimately affects every living thing. And I've had this idea for a long time. What would you recommend to do with this parking lot? Right now, there's some trees, they're cherry trees or something, and they're not anything that is productive or is helping any living organism. So what would you suggest?
I mean, I'll give an example.
Yep.
In the city of Bristol, there was some tennis courts that they just weren't using. And they applied for a urban forestry grant to dig it up and plant some trees. So, you could try to, I don't know who owns the parking lot in question, but you have to, obviously, you can't just go out there with like pickaxes
Right.
and dig it up, but like, you could see if there's a grant that you could get. If you, like I said earlier, FRWA has a settlement fund that we got because of a polluter, and we have to use this settlement fund to reduce stormwater. And if it's a project that you need materials, we would be happy to provide that. Assuming that it's an approved project, and we're not doing this in the cloak of darkness. But yeah, like those kind of things where I would say just try to bring it to the attention of the owner, whoever they may be, and see if it's a desired parking lot, and then just say, well, what's around it? So in this Bristol example, it just was like, they had other tennis courts. Nobody was using these tennis courts. I mean, it was probably before the pickleball craze, so I don't know if they're regretting their decision or not, but they dug it up, they planted some trees. It was near the river, it was near the Pequabic River. They took over that area. It was part of a park. So, I think it would be nice to eliminate parking lots that we don't need. And then if we do have a parking lot with a storm drain like smack dab in the middle, maybe we can make a garden around it. Or, I walk around sometimes. I live near Elizabeth Park, and they have like this giant grassy area just that they mow, and there's like a storm drain in the middle of it. And I'm like, this is just begging to be just like lifted up and made into a garden around it, So it's just finding the opportunities. And FRWA is happy to work with you. We have, our current NIFWIF grant has rain gardens as part of our deliverables, but those gardens take 2 or 3 years from concept to installation. And so what we do is we're hoping we continue to get those projects, and we just keep moving through the process and saying, okay, we're going to do 1 to 2. If we do 2, we're happy. If we, and then we're just always working with communities. We do have a good partnership with City of Bristol. They also have a lot of impervious surface that could really be remediated. So, we're putting our money where we think the necessary work needs to be done. But Windsor is another community that could use that. We worked with, I have promised funds to Town of Bloomfield for trees. They have a community tree project. So I've said, if you need trees, just ask us. And I don't have like boatloads of money to but if it's a small project, we are willing to help. And, it just depends on the surface area and everything.
And the parking spaces are black, and it just reflects the heat.
Yeah.
So you get a heat sink, you get all kinds of problems. It's miserable. And in this day and age, we need less of that.
I agree,
I was going to ask, it's a big topic, but down in Hartford, that giant storm system, that tunnel they're building underground, that instead of trying to put in separate storm and sewer systems, do you know about this tunnel?
I have heard about it, yes.
Yeah, it's an 18-foot diameter. I think it's 6 miles long underground. And it's to, when there's big storms in Hartford, it's to hold all the water. It's actually going to make a lot of money for MDC. And then MDC will get to treat all the water that came out of the combined sewers. They'll be treating the stormwater and the sewer water because it's all mixed in. The benefit is that much cleaner water will go into the Connecticut River. So.
Yeah, I mean,
I would guess it's done by ongoing about 10 years.
no, there was a tour of that tunnel. I wanted to go.
Almost done.
Is it almost done?
Yeah. A lot of money. A lot of money.
But the flooding
I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, the problem is, like, I feel really bad for people in the north end of Hartford because, you know, it's just the same thing. It's Bloomfield building out, putting all their water into the storm drains, and then that goes in, and it goes flying down to Hartford, and they don't have separated sewers, and they're just popping out and causing all this flooding. And so it's really a regional problem.
Yeah, it actually comes out of the manholes and floods the streets.
Yeah, and so, you know, it's just, oh, what?
Can I just say that we are all member towns of the MDC, and as water users, we are paying for that, to fix that regional challenge, even though the focus of it is mainly in the Hartford, West Hartford area. Just so all of us, we're paying probably $2.75 now for every cubic foot that we use of water. So, so that is, is a regional challenge, and I think the region is, those 8 towns are contributing to address that particular challenge.
Have you seen the giant hydroponic garden in the north end of Hartford?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So
The
cool.
the Vivo.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Can you talk about, I know you had mentioned it very early in it, what the airport does for, if anything, to remediate any of their runoff into the river, or they don't do anything at all and they just say,
They have grassy strips on both sides of the runway, I think, for the most part.
okay,
They're polluting Rainbow Brook.
yeah.
So,
PFAS or jet fuel?
well,
Well, I know the PFAS thing.
there probably is PFAS, but the Rainbow Brook is like a cloudy, white-ish color. The conductivity readings are out of this world, but I think they're supposed to address that through the state. I mean, there may be an expert in the room that knows more about that, I don't know.
I used
The
to work
airport.
right near the airport, and we had to get bottled water in because there was an issue with the de-icing stuff. going
Yeah.
into the
Well, yeah,
water.
just all the stuff that's over there and it's all running, I assume, into our groundwater.
It's,
there's
it
no-
is it's an impaired water body, the Rainbow Brook, and they are looking at it, but it's bigger than FRWA could fix.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, we're trying to figure out what kind of conductivity readings we're getting, you know, temperature, but, you know, it's a small brook, thankfully, but it's got a funny color.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's salts. You know, all of that stuff is salt, so it's dissolved,
Okay.
but,
Thank you.
Maybe a quick one. We have a weird situation in our yard where we have a storm drain, comes from the road, then pops out into our yard, and it goes across the yard in like a little like river thing, and then like off into like more storm drains. And like, I don't think we could do like a swale, because there's no way that we could handle as much water as is coming from the road. But do you know of any like particularly hardy plants that you would put in a situation where like sometimes it's, you know, 4 feet deep going all the way across, and then sometimes it's a trickle, but it seemed like, yeah, it seems like a thing where we like, on our side, we could just plant as much stuff in it as possible and see what happens.
How long does the water stay? Does it stay for a few hours, a few days, a few weeks?
It's always a trickle, but yeah, I mean, after a storm, it's you know, it'll be like 4 feet deep for an hour, and then it's.
I would think a lot of plants could survive that.
I mean, this website has a listing of plants that would work. And I think, you know, if you just go walk around a local wetland near you and see what kind of plants are there, I would say a river birch, or, you know, I mean, it'll grow really big, but some shrubs would be like blueberry or.
Pussy willow trees like water, and they're really.
Yeah, I mean,
pretty.
you know, I can't say, because I don't have a soil test and I don't
Yeah.
have any of that, but just stuff that, I mean, if you go and check out this list, you can find, they probably have, shrubs that are good. It depends on how big you want them to be, but, cattails might be interesting, but I mean, you also need to understand what is that conveyance swale doing. Is it, you don't want to block it and then you're going to get water
Yeah.
flowing towards your home, so you have to maybe not fiddle too much with the inside, but be on the edges.
There's a wetland plant place somewhere near Amherst, Mass, right?
Yeah, New England wetland plants.
Is a great place to get a lot of kind of hard to find plants. We buy special grass seeds from them and we put them in some of our edges of our woodland, and just all kinds of native grasses and flowers come. I mean, their seed is like $80 a pound, but it's amazing. So, and they're just to go visit them is cool.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. All right, well, thank you
Thank
again
you.
very
Yes,
much.
thank
Welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
We
good.
have a lot of food, so hope you're still hungry. Eat up, everybody.
Breakfast for the
And
week.
one last thing I just wanted to mention, so we obviously taped this presentation, and it will eventually be up on something. I'm not sure where that is exactly, but we also have the other two presentations available for viewing, again, somewhere where I don't know, but they're out there. I know they're out
They're
there.
on YouTube.
YouTube.
They're on YouTube. How do you find them?
Win TV.
Yeah, go to the Win TV site or.
Yeah, for Win TV, if you live here in town and you have Xfinity, it's channel 5. And if you don't have cable, YouTube, type up Windsor Community Television, and the Windsor Climate Action will be in the title, so it'll be this video, and you can see all the other videos that I've put together in the past.
Awesome.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, NTV. Thank you
Yes,
so
thank
much,
you.
Amy. And thank you all for coming. All right.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
to the river. Thank you.